Welcome back to our In Learning Partnership Coaching into the Future live stream event. We are so excited that you're joining us today to hear about how we are pulling in all of the lessons we've learned over the last few years and really become that new version of supporting teachers, really looking forward to how we are going to transform teaching and learning moving forward. And Gina Weaver is our next guest, and I am so excited to have her with us today. Gina, hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Gina's with Noblesville Schools. She and I have actually had career crossovers for the last 15 years, and it's so amazing to always catch up with these educators that have continued to grow and thrive and support in new ways. And I'm excited to hear you share a little bit of your story, Gina.
Thank you. I'm excited to share. Well, welcome. I'm so glad you are here, even if you are here live or later virtually. That's the joy of what we are currently doing in education, right? We can learn now or we can learn in our pajamas later. So it's kind of exciting this time. Today, I want to talk a little bit about this phrase interpandemic, and I want to share a little bit about my journey with being an interpandemic coach. And I'm going to also tell you where this word came from and how it's sort of stuck with me as I've been evaluating myself as a coach and reflecting on not only what I'm doing now, but where I'm going to be, what am I going to be doing in the future if with coaching. So welcome. So here's a little bit of the overview that we're going to talk about today. I want to share a little bit about my coach history, only because that plays into part with my role today and sort of that journey that got me where I am. Some of the passions that I have about coaching and what I turn to in my most craziest moments. I'm also going to share a little bit about my learning curve with building relationships, what happened right before our pause button, how I got teachers to participate, and then we just kind of halted, but then how do I get back to that? That's always been my goal. And then today, what do we do as an interpandemic coach? How do we work around the obstacles that have been set for us and not look at them so much as obstacles, but rather just moments that we can share for the future generations? So welcome. So like I said, kind of getting into my background a little bit. Who am I? I am a family and consumer sciences teacher at heart, where I should just say I'm a practitioner at heart. Everything I do, I think through the lens of kids. That's why we do what we do as coaches. We look at what is that impact that I have with the adults in the room that could then impact the kids that are in the room. And when I started out as coaching, I didn't really plan on it. It sort of was a journey in terms of learning. I got a hold of a book by Kelly Gallagher. And I was obsessed with thinking through the lens of how do I get away from just using a textbook and how can I get kids to read what's around them? And I actually partnered with one of our local librarians, and I was teaching high school at the time, and she helped me build like this mini library in my classroom. And twice a week, I would have kids come in, and they would be able to either bring a book that they had checked out of the library, which amazed me at how many kids were not, taking advantage of the library, and then or choose a book that I had in the back room. And I tried to make sure there were books that were current or maybe a little controversial that they might get riled up about to read, get excited about. So that was kind of fun to kind of go down that journey. And then I also took it upon myself to read some of them so that I could have enriching conversations. So what I didn't realize is those little pieces, learning from Kelly Gallagher, co-teaching with someone in the district at the time that had not been in a high school classroom in a really long time. And then also watching kids like light up and read in my classroom, I realized this is cool. Like, this is really cool to think about what we could do with kids and reading. And so that started my journey, and that's who I am today. So I got the opportunity to coach 1 day a week at a middle school and 4 days a week at an elementary school. And then I went full-time at an elementary school. So that's my background in coaching. So I feel like I've taught the gamut, K-12, which is also really, really cool and feeds into that practitioner at heart with who I am. So a couple of the passions that I have, I love to read, and I know that that's kind of a cliche thing to say. Everybody loves to read, but I do. And what I realized was there was so many educational books out there, And as a former high school teacher, I hadn't really tapped into some of those resources. And when I realized, there were all these names out there that have done so much good for education, I just couldn't stop reading them. And I really wanted to know more about them. So I started to build my own library in terms of professional development resources. And what I found is that as I built them, I could share them. And so I would bookmark pages or sticky note pages. As I got digital, I would upload, digital books and go with my Kindle and my iPad and be able to share with teachers snippets of little books or little parts of books. And that would hopefully spark some interesting conversation. And it also helped me get my foot in the door with some teachers because I felt like if I had a variety of topics that I could talk to them about, I could make a connection with what it is that they're passionate about and share that passion with them. So that was kind of cool. And then I also want to talk a little bit about my switch. So I ended up moving from one school district to another. And it was one of those moments where it was the right time. And I'm still closely connected to the previous school district because my kids go there. But I did something that kind of threw a loop or threw a kink in my coaching career. And that was I had to start over. And I learned some really hard lessons starting over. So that also, the reason I'm sharing this is because it leads me to my role today, in that starting over feeling. It's not easy to get mushy with something that you're not comfortable with. And when I switched school districts in schools, I had to figure out relationships. I was now in a setting where I knew no one. I did not have any background with anyone, any history with anyone. It was just a clean slate. So I had to figure out, how do I build these relationships without overwhelming teachers with everything that I wanted to share. I always felt like I was bursting. I don't know if anybody's ever felt like that. Like you're bursting to tell everything you know, but you know that you can overwhelm if you do that. So I had to kind of restrain back. My assistant principal sat me down and she could tell that I was bursting. And we kind of reflected on the year so far in my new building. And I shared with her my frustration with, what do I do? How do I continue to build relationships other than, standing in the hallway and saying hi to everyone, or, kind of going around and just high-fiving, teachers when they're doing celebrations in their classroom? How do I get in and do that real deep work? And she shared something with me that I would love to share with you. And it's a phrase. She said, Gina, first of all, take a breath. And second, sleep, creep, leap. And I looked at her like she had 10 faces. But she shared with me that, your first year or so here, just sleep. Like, be in the background, but be there, be everywhere. Be in different places, be there for teachers in different ways. Just kind of sleep, but be there around, so that if they need you, you can use that as your in. And don't worry about being so rambunctious about getting in right away, because I came from a setting where I knew everyone and I could be like, oh my gosh, this first grade classroom, this would be a great idea for them. I couldn't really do that because I didn't know these teachers yet as teachers, as educators. So I slept. I did. I did that quite well, I hope. And then year 2, 3, we did a lot of creeping where I would sort of nudge in different places. I got to meet with the teachers as grade levels, do some individual work with teachers. And so that was kind of my creep year. And it sounds kind of weird to say sleep creep, but it works, I promise you. So I would just kind of nudge my way in or say, hey, I have this idea, or I don't have kids right now and I just read about this. Could I try this out in your classroom? And could you give me feedback on it? So that was usually a good way to kind of get in and be vulnerable with a teacher, in a way that they was safe, that they could see that I'm safe and they can be vulnerable with me as well. And then year 3 and 4, oh my gosh, we were rocking. We had collaboration days on a regular basis with grade level teams. We had collaboration days in what's called the collaboration room. Everything was about collaborating and growing and learning together and being vulnerable. And we even had things called seed sessions where we would plant a seed and anybody could lead a seed session. And you could come and hear it in the morning or in the afternoon and then go off and try it off. So it's a seed session. So we're hoping to plant seeds that will grow. And then, yeah, we had even, lab sites going, starting to go. And then March, that was my year 3, 4. We hit kind of a the brakes. We hit the brakes on everything. We went home and I had to talk to teachers through a screen, and I had to figure out, try to remember where they were in the classroom and what essential standards we needed to kind of focus on to make sure that we're getting what we need to get, but, kind of cutting out the other stuff. And what I learned from that is that we started cutting out things that we needed the most, like play, reflection, um, the ability to get mushy with something and have it not be 100% right in front of kids. And we started to be really critical of ourselves in a way that I had never seen before. So that really gave me kind of a pause. And that's where, sorry, not using my slides, that gave me the pause button. That gave me the idea that how do I get teachers to pause and see what they're truly doing for kids and how what they're truly doing matters. How do we pause what we were doing in the classroom and try not to make it fit inside of this digital box? Instead, how do we grow it and have it meet where kids are at, but in their own way and in the teacher's own way? They were doing a lot of learning alongside of the kids, and that was kind of cool. And so we kind of adopted this idea of like pause, reflect, play. Like, don't be afraid to laugh with your kids, or don't be afraid to record something and in the middle of the video, just say, "Oh, hold on a second, let me rephrase that. I don't know if I said that right," and just rephrase it, like you would do in front of kids, showing your vulnerability. So that was kind of an interesting way to think through that. And then it got me thinking about how do we coach that way? Am I being vulnerable with teachers? Through this, pause button time, this interpandemic, how am I showing them that I'm learning alongside of them, but also being available when we're doing this work? So I want to go back to that phrase, interpandemic. And I read an article. I'm going to share the article. It was an ASCD article, and it was by Allison Rodman. And it's titled, "I Went Back to School in Person. It's Not Normal, and Neither Are We." And I thought, what a great title. And it's a January 10th, just a quick article, but she talks about that phrase, interpandemic, and that interpandemic space, which is that time between what are traditional notions of what schooling once were, and then what they have the potential to become. And that got me thinking about coaching, that potential of what coaching was, and then what does it have the potential to become now that we have these opportunities that we haven't had before. So that leads me into today. So in thinking about how we move forward, I take through that, like that sleep, creep, leap idea, and I think about how do we continue to rebuild those relationships. And one of the different ways that I've been doing that is just having lunch with teachers. Yes, we still are masked at times, but we can sit across from each other in a certain way and still connect. And sometimes really good conversations come out of that. Not just building those relationships, but their families have changed, their lives have changed. And I needed to figure out how to reconnect with teachers because of that. I wanted conversations to be back to that sleep phase when I first got to know them. Their kids have grown. I mean, 2 years is a huge chunk of time. My own family has changed in those 2 years. So how do I reconnect with those teachers to build those relationships in the classroom? And so, like I said, one way I did that was sort of having lunch, or thinking about my own language when I'm in the hallway. Instead of saying, "How's it going?" Instead it was, how did math go today? I know you've been thinking about, XYZ, or how did it go today with your small group with so-and-so? Because I know that you were really thinking about how you're impacting that kiddo, when we were talking about them. So I'm trying to be more direct with my questions with teachers, because we're in that interpandemic where we sort of are like, it's fine. Like if you ask somebody, "How's it going?" They're like, "It's fine," or "It's not fine." But we really don't have that reflection time to sometimes get into that. So when can I build that reflection time in with teachers when it's not taking more of their already precious time during their day? So I'm trying to figure out, how do I become valuable, but at the same time, a resource that they can lean on when they haven't really thought about me in the past couple of years. And I say that because, going back to that practitioner at heart, last year I taught second grade online the entire year. And boy, was that squishy, messy, and fun. but I also was able to be vulnerable with my teachers and share that with them. So that also has helped many of my conversations. When I taught online last year, that was hard. I totally hear what you're saying. So let's unpack that together. That's been a lot of my reflection with teachers. How can I unpack that with you? But I also know that having a little bit of dirt under my fingernails in terms of teaching got me back to that why I do what I do. And again, when we impact the adults in the room, I know those adults can then impact kids in a positive way. So going back to how do we build capacity with teachers? So I've talked a little bit about how we move forward, and in thinking about the work you do on a daily basis, the direct question, not the generic, how's it going? Having those quick lunches or, writing a thank you note, going back to those basics, but then also I think about how can I use digital coaching? So for instance, hey, you have a kiddo that you're wanting to do a quick math assessment on. Why don't I record myself doing that math assessment that you're thinking of doing with other students? But before you do it, you can watch me do it with one of your kids and then give them a blank assessment and not share my notes, and then have them watch the video with their kiddo and do it alongside with me. So that way they're not really put on the spot, but I'm also not taking class time or having them rearrange their schedule for me to come in. So that's another fun thing that we've started, conferring with a small group. I can pull them into the hallway and do that, but also record it. We're using a new resource this year in our 3-5 grade levels. And so something that I actually just started today, I recorded myself, and it's messy, but I recorded myself doing a lesson from that new resource in a way that's directed with the kiddos that I had in front of me. So how can we use it, not a whole class situation, but also with the needs of that small group? How can I use this resource, but alter it with the kids that are in front of us? So another way I've been doing that is just getting messy in front of a video recorder, my phone, whatever I have on me, and letting teachers then view it at their own time to kind of give either feedback or to think, oh, I could try that move, or I don't know if I could try that one, but I wonder if Gina could try something like this, and then, maybe put that out there for me to watch later. So I'm hoping that sparks conversation. So something about interpandemic coaching and just coaching in general is, yes, we have a coaching cycle. We have certain types of coaching and structures and norms that we can follow, but really it's the relationships at the heart of it. And you're moving with those relationships and you're growing with those relationships. And sometimes it looks different, just like with what your instruction looks like in a classroom. It looks different for all the kids in front of you. It's going to look different for all the teachers in front of you. Some just want the down and dirty, just tell me how it is. And some say, just, hey, can you give me a moment to marinate in that? And then I'll get back to you on how I feel about, starting this or working towards this. And then some teachers will use the phrase shelve it. Hey guys, I'm going to share this out there, but you may want to shelve it and pull it out later, but it may not be something you want to use right now. So shelve it, but know that it's there to have. So yeah. So something else in thinking about coaching is, how do we give teachers, and this comes from the great Cornelius Minor, his work that's out there. If you haven't had a chance to get to know him, totally get out there and find him. But he's told me something that stuck with me as well. How do I give teachers on-ramps and off-ramps? Because we're all human. We can only do so much with the capacity that we have. And sometimes the teacher may only have 10% capacity for the professional development that we're doing or the work that we're doing. And I need to honor that 10% and be okay with that, because that's what they can give. Some teachers may only have 30 to 50% that they can give to whatever we're working on. And I need to be able to give them an on-ramp and an off-ramp to the work that we're doing. But I don't want them to forget about the work, but we're always moving forward. So I like that an analogy of like a highway, like we're getting on and off the ramp at different points in time, but we're always getting back on the ramp. We're always moving forward in terms of the work that we do. So not only with teachers, but coaches, how do we take care of ourselves and give ourselves on and off ramps with the hard work that we're doing? Teachers want to be proud of what they do, and we need to be able to honor that with them and know that we're here alongside them, not because we want them to change. We just want them to grow. And I think that sometimes there's a misunderstanding with coaches that we're going to change you, or we're going to come in and, have these mandates or anything like that. And no, it's all relationship building. It's all about how we can build our work that we do together. And then some teachers want to be transparent with others and share it with their team. And then some, they're not quite sure yet, because being vulnerable is hard. And that's where I think lean on your coach, or be that coach that can be vulnerable for the teacher, and to build that. So as we move forward, I want to share some words that came from that article that I shared earlier about interpandemic. But what our students need right now is us, educators who continue to teach, but also learn together. And that's the author of the article, Allison Rodman. But I almost want to change that and think through what our educators need right now is us, coaches who continue to teach, but also learn together. Our coaching group seems small. And if you're in a building where you are a lone coach, sometimes you're that in between. You're working with administrators and central office, and then you're also working with your educators, your teachers that surround you with the work that they're doing. And it can sometimes feel kind of lonely, but find your group, find your people, and work to think through, how do you be vulnerable? And I know that sometimes the relationships that I have with teachers in the building help me to continue to grow that. And that's what's pretty special. So thank you for coming. Here is my contact information if you have any questions. I'm happy to share anything and everything.
Thanks, Gina. That was really lovely. I loved the idea of the pattern of sleep, creep, and leap, and just that kind of consistently growing your presence and support and building relationships. And I do agree, it can be lonely when you're the only coach in a building, or heck, even for our smaller schools, our district may only have one coach. And so coming together as a collaborative support network is so important. And thank you for helping to build that network and connections. Everybody, please reach out. I love Twitter as a professional learning network. So Teach Coach Dream is the Twitter handle for Gina. And hashtag in learning partner. We would love to start hearing those connections that you're making with each other through social media. And Gina, I just want to thank you so much for being part of our live stream event today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back in just a few minutes with Google coaching and how tech-infused coaching is also becoming such a big part of the coaching landscape. Thanks again, Gina, and thanks everyone. Stick around for our next session.